Hi, I'm Vanessa. Welcome back to the Solena Global Living Podcast, where we cover real stories, real estate, and the realities of life abroad. Today, we're focusing on Sevilla and the realities of finding a rental property in the city. And my guest is Stephanie Jahn. Stephanie is my go-to referral agent. She's part of my network of English-speaking local real estate experts that I work with in Sevilla. And she is a wealth of information. She's also a tapas tour guide and she does an incredible job. So, a woman of many talents. I'll be enjoying another one of her tapas tours in November when I bring my expatsy scouting trip back to Sevilla to learn more about life in the city. If you're interested in joining me on a scouting trip, make sure to check the description for more details. But today, in this episode, we're going to talk about why Sevilla, what makes it such a great place to live, and why you might want to move here. We'll also talk about rental costs, things you should expect when looking for a rental, and how Stephanie helps newcomers find their place in this magical city. Okay, without further ado, let's dig in. Hey, Stephanie, how's life in Sevilla?
Hi, good. Yeah, it's great. Life in Sevilla is
Well,
always great. A little warm in the summertime, but not too bad.
just a little toasty, just a little toasty. Well, I'm excited to chat with you about life in Sevilla and real estate and your story. So let's dive in. So, first of all, why Sevilla? How did you end up in one of my favorite cities in Spain?
So it's actually kind of a funny story because my original how is very random. When I was studying Spanish in university, and as a part of I was going to minor in it, decided to major in it. If you major in it, you had to study abroad. I mean, twist my arm, right? I'm like, okay, fine.
Yeah.
So I wanted Spain because I wanted Europe, so I could travel around Europe. And there were two options. There was like a little study abroad fair, and there were two options for for Spain, and it was either Salamanca or Sevilla. The person at the Salamanca stand just wasn't there when I happened to pass by. The person from the Sevilla stand was. And she was telling me how wonderful Sevilla is with the people and the culture and the food and the weather and the this and the that. I'm like, sounds fantastic. Where do I sign? And I made the decision on just a split second decision that quick to study abroad, right? Because thinking, well, to study abroad is still not the end of the world, it's not the biggest thing. And then come to find out, then that's what kind of was the catalyst for the rest of my life. I didn't stay. I did go home, finish school, work for a few years, and then I came back. But I wanted to come back to Sevilla, at least to start. I wasn't really planning on staying permanently in general, and I wasn't planning on staying in Sevilla. But since I had studied here and I was coming alone, I was like, well, this has a little bit of familiarity, right? So if my life went totally sideways, I would have my school that I studied at or whatever. And then I stayed. And then I spent 6.5 years. And that 6 month student visa was one more year until here we are.
And here we are. Do you ever think you'll go back to the US permanently?
I mean, never say never. You never know what life's going to bring you, right? But I'm really happy here. For me, of course, other than because you have friends and family well, I don't have family here, but you build your life here. So apart then of the really obvious choices, like, well, of course, my family and friends are back home, but I also then have family here and my partner, my cat, my job, and you create your own life. But apart from all that, for me, the biggest thing is I feel a lot healthier here, like a lot healthier. I'm from Wisconsin, and so I can only speak from my experience in Wisconsin, but it's just crazy. I moved here alone by myself, so I need to make a life. I need to go out and I need to meet people. What are you gonna do? You're gonna just go out of the house, right? And especially with the tapas culture, it makes it really easy, especially here in the south of Spain. Everyone's always outside, everyone's out and about, and they're really warm and welcoming and would love to chat with you, everyone. So that makes things a little bit easier. But so I went out often for tapas and a drink or two quite often. And so it's not on paper, that's not the healthiest lifestyle, right? We tend to think that cooking your own meals at home and living that quieter lifestyle tends to be healthier. And I lost 9 kilos in my first 9 months that I came here on accident. Like I didn't, but just by instead of driving everywhere, I was walking and biking everywhere. The quality of food is so much better, so much better. And the tapas culture in general, you end up consuming less quantity. And it was just that. I never belonged to a gym. I still don't. And I lost weight and kept it off. I think for me, that's a big one. And then the healthcare as well, that kind of loops into the whole package. So for me, that's like my really big, it'd be tough to go back to the US letting all that go, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's so interesting how the environment impacts you in such a profound way. Just the ability to walk places,
Oh,
which
yeah.
just isn't a thing in so many places. You have to use your car. And the sizes, yes, the portion. Actually, I want to do a post on this, just what a sandwich looks like in the United States versus what a bocadillo, a sandwich, looks like in Spain. I mean, they are very different things. And you get higher quality, less food, less calories, less expensive, and just better. And those things add up over time. Those accumulate over time.
Right. Absolutely. Well, and then even
Yeah.
just like apart from the size and all that, it's just tapas culture in general is great because then you can try a bunch of different things and be a little bit more adventurous, right? Because it's such a
Yeah.
commitment in the US. Like, what do I want? What do I want for me? There's my whole mountain of food that's going to be on my plate, which is too much quantity. But in order to pay, be worth it, you have to do that. But anyway, um, it's a decision. It's like, well, I only get to choose one thing, so I better make it good. So you tend to be less adventurous. Whereas when, okay, you and I are gonna go out for lunch or dinner, well, let's try 3, 4, 5 different things, and then we can split them. If ultimately I don't really love one, but you liked it, okay, great, the rest is for you, or vice versa. Like, it's more freeing, I think.
Yeah, I love that. I think you are really good at describing the experience of being in Sevilla. So, if you were, to describe Sevilla to somebody who really had no concept, what adjectives would you use? What descriptors would you use?
Well, there's a lot, right? There's a lot. Yeah, it's just such a wonderful place for so many reasons. It's I think kind of the things I mentioned before. The people are just really wonderful. The people are just everything. And also all the history. You walk down the street and you're walking past history, but so much history. Sevilla used to be the capital city, right? It's not anymore, but because it had that history at one time, the old town is massive. There's many neighborhoods within the old town. The old town in Sevilla is the largest old town in Spain. And it's I think in the top 3 of Europe. It's really large. And so even just staying within the old town, there's so much to do, and each neighborhood has its own vibe, has its own, its own type of people, its own things to do, and that's all within the old town. And then, of course, then you leave the old town, and then there's even more to do and see. And but I think it's such a magical place. It's very enchanting in a lot of ways. A lot of people tell me that as well. Like when you live somewhere the excitement rubs off a little bit. It's not as shiny and new for you, but there's still a few places in the city that every time I pass it, I'm like, wow, because there's this really big chunk of the old city walls. And whenever I bike past it, because it's also a very bikeable city, which is wonderful. It's super flat.
Yeah.
So you just go, you feel like you're going up a mountain when you have to go over a bridge, because then you just get it's like, oh, I'm used to not having to work at all. This is just really easy. But you go, there's this one chunk of the wall, and every time I pass that, I'm like, this is where I live. Like, this is just you're looking at centuries year old. I mean, it's really hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years old. And it's just there. That it's just right there. And I think it's really magical in for me at least. I think as an American, and I think a lot of Americans we can resonate with this, is we don't have a whole lot of history in the US. We have a little bit, right? But it's not the same. And it's not the same type of history that you just walk down the street and there's a building that's 400 years old and it's just somebody's house. That's just a normal building. I mean, it's not some historic landmark that we've labeled. No, it's just a house. It's just a building because they're all that old.
Yeah.
I think for us, again, at least for me, I can speak for myself. It's really wonderful to walk down the street and just be surrounded by history. It makes history class. It makes me want to go take history class again. I didn't pay as much attention when I was actually in the class.
Yeah, it makes it real. It makes it alive. I mean, the house that I live in was built in 1647. So my house is older than America. And I think about that often. It's so amazing, like the lives that have lived here. And we've actually had tour groups show up at our house randomly saying, our grandparents lived here and we really just wanted to see, where our ancestors came from. And like, how cool is that? So yes, I think that getting to live in history is fascinating. And I agree. Walking down the street in Sevilla is just spectacular. The architecture, the
Yeah.
history, this is fantastic. You have the privilege of helping people explore the city in a lot of different ways. You're a real estate agent, you're a rental specialist, and you're also a tapas tour guide, and you're a fabulous one. And I can't wait to see you when we're there in the city for our scouting trip with Expatsy in when we'll be there, November, early November. So Talk to me about, let's kind of shift gears and talk about helping people find their place in the city. When somebody comes to you and they're looking to rent and they don't know where to start, how do you help them figure out which areas to focus on?
So usually what we do is everybody's different, right? Everybody's timeline's different, everybody's kind of plan is different. But usually what people tend to do is they do what we call a scouting trip. So they'll come and then I'll take them around. So if they kind of know they want within the city, then okay, then we walk usually around the city center because that's tend to be where people want to start just because then especially if they're going to rent first. Okay, well let's just get our feet wet, let's get to know the city. Living in the city center is really nice in the old town because as I mentioned, it's really big. So there's
Mhm.
options within that. Many cities, the old town is one neighborhood, right? That's the old
Mhm.
town. And that's just that. And then you move in other places. So we do have the luxury of being able to find your place within the old town. So if that's the case, then that's the way we do it. We'll just walk around the city center, kind of, grab a coffee here, walk through these neighborhoods over there, try to kind of get a sense of a vibe of a place. Because I do think that's really important. Just walking through it, even though you're not even in properties yet, you do get kind of a good vibe, in my opinion anyway, of that area. You see the types of people that are walking through, you see, the type of businesses that are there, and you can kind of imagine yourself. And other people, it depends on what people are looking for as well. Some people want a more modern building, a newer build. Some people love that old charm and they want to be in an older area. So it does just kind of depend on the person. It's just yesterday I was with some other clients and they had been there, like they kind of did the city center before I got back. It just was on holiday, and they're like, we don't want to live in the city center. It's beautiful, we love it, but we've got a 5-year-old boy, we've got a dog, we want to be out in the suburbs, we want to be in a town. So we hopped on the metro. We met in the city center, and then we hopped on the metro, and we went to a couple different cities along the metro line. Metro line, there's one, so that makes it nice and easy. You don't get lost because there's only just the one. But and then we went and looked, and we found them a place that they really enjoy. They're like, you know what, this is it. They went to a couple. We went to a couple different places, and like we really like Mairena del Aljarafe. It's a really beautiful city, town. So that's what we usually do. Let's start with a scouting trip, if time permits. If not, if we come and I need to find a place right away, we do the same thing. It's just that's our first day, right? And so because I do think it's a really important piece of the puzzle whether that's a few months in advance, a year in advance, or 2 days in advance. Either way, I think that's the best way to get started.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because you can read everything online, you can watch videos, you can talk to other people, but you don't really know until you are there. Like you
Right.
have to feel it, you have to hear it, you have to smell it. You have all of your senses impact how you feel about a place. And I agree. So I actually just did a rental with a client who's moving with 3 dogs. They need to show up and they need a midterm rental. And it's a little nerve wracking. I think they're going to like this neighborhood. It's a great location. Thankfully, it's only temporary. It's a 6-month lease, but that's my opinion. Hopefully, they love it too. So being able to take the time to really soak it in and feel the neighborhood is important. Let's talk about pricing. So, city center, 2 bed, 2 bath. What should somebody expect to pay for a rental, a long term rental?
Sure. I'd say 1,500 is a really good benchmark. You can find things for less than that. You can find things for more than that. I like to, that's kind of middle of the road because you can get a nice solid place for that price. Again, everybody's different. What are we looking for? What is important to us? Something that's a really big point that we need to talk about is air conditioning here in Sevilla. And that's just goes in Spain. And actually, I'd argue most of Europe. Air conditioning we think about it in the US as of course an automatic, yes, of course it's going to have heating and air conditioning. And also that usually means it's central air. Here in Spain, and especially in the south at least, it's not you can find central air, you absolutely can. You're going to pay for that though. And especially again, if I want an older place with the charm, likely it's not going to have the central air because that's a very modern thing. It doesn't mean it won't have air conditioning, but usually you're going to have that wall unit. Most flats will have one in the living room, often one in the master. If it has one in each bedroom, that's a bonus. I would also say if it has it in the master, that's still a bonus. But most places will. I mean, you will definitely, especially in that price point, you will be able to find something. But that is something that's a thing that we need to talk about, right? Because of course, air conditioning is very important, especially here in the South. Also, though, it tends to be, depending on the layout, if there's one in the living room, that's usually okay for the living space. And the kitchen, okay, it's going to be warm, but there's ways around it. Many people, that's just the way they live here. So it's obviously it's possible. It's just a way of getting used to it. Again, I'm from Wisconsin. I am not from a very warm place. And so if I can do it, anybody can do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Talk about the availability, timeframes, and how difficult it is to actually find a rental.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So availability is a good question because it's interesting the way that they do things here. At least in the South, I would assume it's similar up by you, but it's often what you see advertised that it's available to move in tomorrow. And so it's tough, especially for people coming from abroad. They want to, we're planners, right? Like we're innately Americans, we're planners. We're efficient. We like to get things done. We like to do it done correctly and quickly, but also planning ahead. So if I'm at the end of July and maybe I'm looking for September 1st, but that's going to be tough because the places in July, a lot of them are available either for right now or August 1st. And that, specifically in July is a little bit different because then things kind of shut down in the summertime. August, it's going to be tough because people do work, people are here, but it's tough. Because also to show a property, the person who owns that property is likely going to be on holidays, likely going to be at the beach. So it's just tough to coordinate the schedules with multiple people. But that's so availability, whatever you see, you want to jump on it. So that's good to know in general. So once it's there, it's there. But we can't take too much time to make a decision because as soon as somebody, a qualified renter comes through, they're going to rent it to that person. They're not going to necessarily wait because they want to get paid. Because if you move in today, then you'll still pay those 6 days of the rest of the month, and that's kind of the way that people think about it. Now, as far as, I don't know, what else did you say? You said availability and then what else?
Timeframes, but then also what do you need to qualify to rent? What is a
Okay.
well-qualified buyer or renter?
Yes. So in both cases, right? In renting and buying, I'm talking more about renting just because that's what people tend to do. Before they buy, they like to live here, rent for a year, rent for 6 months even. Just make sure, first of all, is Spain for me? Secondly, is Sevilla for me? And then, is this the neighborhood that I like? So I do think it's honestly recommended to rent. I mean, I make less money that way, but I think it's just the right thing to do. You know what I mean? And it is important. You want to make sure that it's the right fit for you. Some people are really clear, nope, I want to buy, and that's fantastic too. I'm happy to do that. But the rental process is a little different because buying and renting, those are two different conversations because they are quite different processes and require very different things. But on the rental side, in both cases, you're going to need a NIE. Your NIE number, that's your identification number, right? And that's what everybody needs. And you will memorize it because you need it for absolutely everything you do.
You will be giving it to the Amazon delivery guy. That number
Yep.
is everywhere.
Yeah, and it's fine. It's not I think it's weird because for me, it feels like you're giving your social security number, right? Even though it's not. You have a different number that's a social security number. But even that, you can give it to people. You give it to your doctor, you give it to whoever, and no one's going to steal your identity because they can't. It just doesn't work that way. Which I think puts a lot of people at ease to hear that. Same thing with your bank account number, which is just wild. Because if you want to get a bank transfer, you send them your entire IBAN number. I don't know how to say it in English. IBAN, we say it in Spanish.
Yeah.
And it's just that's normal. And they can give you money, but they can't take any. So don't worry, everybody. That's okay. That's normal. But so in order to rent, you're gonna need your NIE number. You're also going to need a bank account, a Spanish bank account. I would argue, and then in order to open your bank account, I would argue it's easier if you have a Spanish a Spanish phone number. You can get one for 10 euros a month, a prepaid number. It's really, really simple. What I do with a lot of my clients is kind of like an added service that I do. I've taken many clients to the bank and to the phone. Well, usually I've learned now that we go to Vodafone or whichever one, it doesn't matter. But for example, right, we go to Vodafone, get your phone number first, then we go to the bank. And because I can help, because most bankers don't speak English. That's one of the wonderful things about in south of Spain. So you get a really authentic experience. That's one of the reasons I chose Sevilla actually, is because I wanted to live somewhere where as a native English speaker, it's really easy to get by in the little bits of little bits of Spanish, and then you create your life in English, which you can do that here as well. Don't get me wrong, but you will have to speak Spanish to to the waiter, to the person at the supermarket, that you will get that little bit that you need. But in any case, and at the bank is one of those examples that they're likely not going to speak English, but that's okay. That's what I'm here for. And then I help them get all set up, and then you have the automatic things with your phone, which is why it's easier if you have a Spanish number. But that's what you want to do. There's within the rental, then there's a whole nother thing because There's worst case scenario, you will have to get a aval bancaria. So like that's your bank guarantee where you'll have to have that full 12 months plus a little bit. And a little bit is usually a couple grand. And it's usually about a month or two extra rent-ish, depending. But you'll have to have that full bank amount in your bank account and it's reserved. You can kind of think of it as a CD, but it's not as an investment purpose. But that's kind of those funds are frozen. That's the worst case scenario. At least here in the South, a lot of people don't actually need that. I always try to prepare my clients that that's what expect that. So then that way, if we don't need it, fantastic. And then it goes into, I don't want to get into all it gets a lot of more details and it gets into the nitty gritty. I'd be happy to talk about it if you like, but I think that's a case by case basis. We'll explain it once we get into it.
So let me clarify because this is not the case up where I live. So you're saying in
Okay.
order to qualify to rent a property, you have to show that you have a full year's worth of rental funds available.
So renting is just, everybody's different. It's tough because when you rent, it totally depends on the property owner and what they feel is normal and justified and necessary. And then it also depends on, are they working with a agency, and depending on what their policy is and how they're advising that person. So it totally depends. Every property is a completely different world. So on the worst case scenario, yes, you'll have to have this bank guarantee, and that's money reserved in your bank. But that I think would go Spain wide. Maybe, well, maybe not. Maybe you just don't need that in the north. But I haven't actually had it yet that I've needed that for my clients. But I do know that I've heard of that happening, and I know that it does happen. But it's just because it does make sense. I do get it because here in Spain, the laws go much more strongly towards the tenant than to the landlord. And so the landlord isn't very protected. What I mean by that is, okay, so I come in, I start renting, I say, yes, I'm a great person. I promise, I'm going to pay my rent every month on time. And the first month I do, second month I do, third month I do, fourth month, I just stop paying just because. Well, the laws go in my favor as the tenant. So as a landlord, especially as a foreigner, so let's say I live there for 3 months without paying, they can't kick me out. It's really difficult to kick someone out. And so then then I just don't pay for 3 months and then I just go back to the United States. There's no way that that landlord is going to be able to recoup that money. They just can't because of how the laws work. They're not going to be able to come chase you down in your home country, wherever that may be. And that's scary to a lot of landlords. So a lot of them don't really care. And especially if the person's American for the good, that's that American privilege, honestly, because often people see an American passport and they see dollar signs. So like, oh, okay, so this person has a lot of money. That's whether that's the case or not. Maybe you have a lot of money, maybe you don't. But they see an American passport and they say, okay, I feel a little bit safer. But in any case, that's the why. And because what it does is you're reserving that amount of money and it's actually in the name of your landlord. And now they don't have access to that money. They only have access if I stop paying my rent. So it's really just a safeguard. And then so year over year, let's say the first year they require it. And then during that year, then they get to know me and I do pay my rent on time. We get to know each other. They trust me. I trust them. We have a nice relationship. Then, you know what? Next year, I'm not going to require that anymore. Okay, great. Or maybe next year, I'm really sorry. It's just, I've been burned in the past. I am going to require you to do that again. And there is a fee. It's like a service that you're doing at the bank. So you do have to pay for that. But so then you may have to do that year over year or maybe then you move to a different place that doesn't require it. So there's the flexibility in there. Other people, they just want to see that you have the money in your bank account and then that's fine. Sometimes they require you to pay instead of 1 month's rent and the security deposit. Sometimes they'll make you pay 2 or maybe 3 months rent. But in any case, if it's a security deposit or that bank guarantee, you will get that money back. It's still yours, right? And so in the case of security deposit, it's held with your landlord. In the case of the bank guarantee, it's held in your bank. And then once it's done, your landlord will have this little piece of paper, like a little receipt or little thing, and then they have to give it back to you in order for you to get those funds unfrozen again. And if they lose it, they won't lose it, but if they do, there's safeguards and you won't lose that money. That is money that's yours. As long as you're paying your rent, you will get that money. It's just, it has to be frozen in your bank account. So it's
Perfect.
not the biggest deal in the world, especially those of us that do come over from the US with a nice little nest egg. A lot of people that come over, they're either on a digital nomad visa or the non-lucrative visa are the two most common. Non-lucrative, especially, you have to be able to prove that you're here and that you have enough money to live without working. So usually it's not a big deal, but it is nice to know that that's something that you could have to do, and it does cost a little bit of money. It's not a crazy amount, but it is a service that you have to pay the bank to do. And again, that's
Right.
worst case scenario.
Right. Well, I'm glad we talked about that because I think that would be a surprise to somebody who's coming over and not used to having to set aside so much money to cover their rent, right? Especially
Right.
like a digital nomad visa where they're earning money and they may not have that kind of funds sitting aside. So we talked about the city center, about 1,500. If you're willing to go out into the suburbs a little bit, how does that change? 2 bed, 2 bath, condo just a little bit outside of the city, what could you expect to pay in rent?
So again, unfortunately, the really fun answer in real estate is always it depends, right? And which tells you nothing. But a little bit less than that. I'd say 2 beds, 2 baths. I mean, you could find something 1,000 maybe even. So you definitely could get more for your money there. You could even go less than that. It depends on what you're willing to give up and the nice, what you really, really want and what's important to you. But yeah, so I'd say definitely less. I'd put it at 1,000. We can get for less than that. You can get for more than that. Again, that just depends on how nice the place is, how updated it is, and all the rest of it. Do you have a
Yeah.
balcony, etc.?
Yeah. What are some of your go-to neighborhoods for newcomers?
Okay, so in the city center, I really like San Vicente and Museo. They're right by the Alameda. Also depends on the age of the people and depends on their lifestyle. Do I want to be in the thick of it? Do I want to be kind of in the hustle and bustle? Or do I want to be a little calmer? A lot of my clients that are kind of in the in between, right? So they like to have access to be able to go there if they want to, but not be so right in the hustle and bustle. The Museo San Vicente, those are really nice places. San Lorenzo also. If you look at the city center, at the old town, there's a really big, it's a big rectangle plaza. It's called the Alameda de Hercules, the Alameda of Hercules. And that's one of the major nightlife districts. Also a great place during the day to go get a cup of coffee. So it doesn't mean that, it means it's for young people by any means. It is one of the nights going out districts, but there's something for everyone there, which is really nice. Like if you want the cheapest beer or if you want a really nice cocktail, if you want a place that's more international friendly or something that's very, very local, there's really something for everyone there, which is nice. But those areas I just mentioned are in between that the Alameda, that nice big plaza, and the river. So it's a really nice area. So that's a place where a lot of my clients actually tend to end up going, and a lot of them actually find them on their own. Like, you know what, we were doing some research, we were doing all our homework, and we saw this looks like a nice place. Or they come, they walk around the city. Oh wow, we really like this area. So it tends to be really popular with the international community. Another really common place that people go is across the river to Triana and Los Remedios. Los Remedios is a nice place. It's a little bit pricier, but it's really nice. It's a great family-oriented spot. It's growing in the international community, but it's still very local. It's a very local, authentic feel. But there's a nice big park there. Like I said, very kind of family-oriented. Yeah, so those would be some nice places to start, and then Porvenir, there's many, but those would be some good places to start, just to name.
Do you have a favorite suburb?
A favorite suburb? You mean like a town, like a different town to live in?
Right. That's on
Um,
the metro line.
yeah, I there's two. I really like Mairena de Al. Okay, I'm gonna say it slow because it's very Spanish sounding. Del Aljarafe. And I can write that down for you if you like, because it is very
Sure.
Spanish. It's very Spanish slash any word that starts with al, like Aljarafe, that comes from as an Arabic root. So a lot, especially here in the South, then you'll see all these names with al something. But anyway, that's a really good one. It's a very nice town, also very family oriented. There's a nice international school there as well. So that tends to be one of my go-tos for families that want to come here or people that just want to live out a little ways, but it's a 15-minute metro ride to get to the city center. So it's really convenient. The other side of the city going southeast is Monte Quinto. Monte Quinto and Dos Hermanas. That's Monte Quinto is technically belongs to Dos Hermanas, which is actually quite big. Dos Hermanas, there are all these towns outside the city, but Dos Hermanas is over 100,000 people. I mean, it's a city, but it's like one of the towns outside of, but that's the big one. But so Monte Quinto pertains to the municipality of Dos Hermanas, but it feels smaller. So you have like kind of the best of both worlds. It's in between. It's closer to Sevilla. It's the last one before you get to Dos Hermanas. But eventually it'll grow and they'll all be connected. There's still right now is a little spot in between, but both of those places are really nice because they'd also have a nice kind of a downtown area, especially in Dos Hermanas, but in Monte Quinto as well. And they both have the quieter suburb feel. You can get more for your money there because there you can go again, depending on what you want, but you can still similar price range, but now you're looking at a townhouse, maybe even a house that has a little garden, may even have a pool that you're going to be spending a little bit more for that. But it's also nice because there's a couple that, depending on the urbanization, but there's many where it's townhouse, 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 so they're all connected. But then behind, like in between, it'll make like a little rectangle, right? And then in between, there'll be a pool. So it's really nice because then you don't have to take care of the pool, but you still have
Yeah.
access to the pool. And it also has that kind of community vibe because there's not as much in the city center. We don't have many for public pools, but in the towns you can, which you can hop in the metro, go to Monte Quinto, Los Hermanas, and go to a public pool as well. So it works both ways, going from the city center out to the suburbs and vice versa.
I'm glad we talked about this because I think when we think about Sevilla, we only think about, well, at least for me, I just think about the city center, the historic center. And I was really surprised when we got to go on the scouting trip in May and you took us to I remember what town we were in, but we saw that amazing villa that I'm still obsessed
Yeah,
with, just to see how green it was and just to really recognize that there's a lot of options outside of the city center for somebody who wants the life of Sevilla, but wants that more relaxed suburban lifestyle or more of that small community feel. And
absolutely.
I think there's a lot more to discover right outside of the city center in Sevilla that people haven't even considered. It's not even on the map for them.
Yeah. No, and that's a good point. A lot of people think, well, if I want a town, then I have to be, I don't know. Well, I'm not even going to finish that because it depends on the person. I don't want to say what a lot of people think. But you're absolutely right. There's a lot of really wonderful places just outside the city center that offer, great hiking trails, or maybe it's close to a golf course, or, kind of depending, just having that quieter, as you mentioned, having a quieter, more suburban lifestyle or feel, but having easy access to the city center. The thing about specifically Guyana, that's where we went. That's a really beautiful, and it actually is growing internationally. It's getting to be more of an international community as well. There specifically, you will need a car. So that's kind of the line because we do have one metro line. So it's still not, that's, in my opinion, one of still the beautiful things about Sevilla, though. It's a city. So it's about 700,000 people. So you're there, you feel like you're in a city. Well, you know that you're in a city, but you feel like you're in a big, small town. And that's
Yeah.
for me, you feel like you're in a big, small town because it does have that, you know your neighbors, you say hi to people. It's cozier. A lot of people are very friendly. Like I said, we're always outside 12 months of the year, except for when it rains and all plans get canceled. So it doesn't rain very often. And we have over 300 days of sunshine. So if it rains today, I'll see you tomorrow. Then no, I'm not going to go, which
Yeah.
is kind of funny. But so some of those towns, it is something to consider if you would need a car. There are buses as well, and actually they are really well connected, so you don't need a car. I would say most of the people that do get a car when they're here is because they've got kids, so you're running around, having to go at specific places at specific times for the activities. You can absolutely get around, and public transport is really great, both buses and the metro, everything, which I think as an American, we're not as used to thinking about that as an option. But it's also important to think you don't need it. You may want it, but I would challenge, no matter where you live, I would challenge yourself to try to live without a vehicle for the first few months and then see, do I really, really need it? Because you don't want to
Yes.
buy a car and then
And
you're stuck with it.
well, that, and as an American, your driver's license does not transfer, which means you will be going back to driver's ed, which is a really rude awakening for anybody over 25. I think
Oh my
certainly if
gosh.
you're my age or older, like the idea of having to go back to driver's ed and take a test and pay for driver's, and it's not cheap. And actually, just FYI, we call it the driver's ed mafia, where there's like a term for it because it's kind of a racket. So
That's so
if
funny.
you can get away without having a car, do it.
Yes, absolutely. Because then you can just kind of live on, I don't know. If you can just have friends that have cars, or there's a thing called BlaBlaCar, which is really, really wonderful. Have you used BlaBlaCar before?
I haven't. No, we have 2 cars and a kid, and we're doing
Yeah, fair.
we're doing this, like,
You
we live in the country. So,
Yeah, you were in that example of often when you have kids, you need a car. I get it, yeah.
yeah.
Well, BlaBlaCar is wonderful because, and we don't obviously have that in the US, but what it is, just for the people at home, it's a beautiful mix between Uber, it's like a long distance Uber and rideshare, right? Because in the like Uber in the sense that it's an app, the drivers are vetted, they're verified, and you have to leave a review and all that. So you kind of get a feel of who the person is that you're getting the car with. But then it's rideshare because it's just, hey, it's me and my car. I'm going to the beach. I've got 2 more spots. Me with 2 friends. We're going to the beach. Does anybody else want to come to help split the cost of gas? And it's like, oh, I also want to go to the beach. Okay, well, come on. We're meeting at this spot at this time. This is where we're going. It's a really, really wonderful way to get around without having a car. So it's a kind of a workaround, right? If you can be a little bit flexible, and then you can talk to him as well and say, hey, would you mind picking me up from this spot, or would you be able to drop me off at that spot? That, whatever, that's my situation. And maybe not. Some people say, yeah, not a problem. Other people say, no, this is one stop on the way. But it's another really, really great option for people, that it gives you a little bit more flexibility with cars. So yeah, lots of options, lots and lots of options.
Lots of options. And I want to go back to one thing you said about the big small town. And I think that's so true. So we had the opportunity to go on your tapas tour, which I highly recommend, and I will add a link below. Stephanie did an amazing job sharing stories about the city, and it was a wonderful experience to hop from different places and have
Good.
Stephanie guide us through this tapas tour. But at the end of it, we stayed out, and I probably wandered home at about, I don't know what, it was late. It was very, very late. And felt so safe and so calm. And I just remember thinking, as an American, I would never in a million years walk home at this hour in a city in the United States. Just would not do it. And
Right.
the people were still out, like regular people were out, and you just feel this like sense of calm and safety. And obviously, we weren't in bad areas, but at the same time, you can live outside. You can live really comfortably out in the community and feel a lot. I just felt a lot safer than I
Absolutely.
would in the United States.
Yeah, and that's a great point. I've been here about 6.5 years. At some point or another, whether it's for catching a bus or walking home or whatever, I've been in the street at every hour of the 24-hour clock, and I have never once felt unsafe. And again, I moved here as a single woman. Especially us women, we have a kind of a whole nother level, minus the kind of, we have a whole nother level of self-protection that we have to be aware of. And I've never felt unsafe. I think a big reason for that is, at least in my opinion, and maybe this is just what makes me feel safe, is one, there's two. One, that you like you said, there's always people in the street. They also in Sevilla, they clean the streets every night. And it's overnight in the middle of the night, like midnight, they clean the street. So it's wonderful because then again, people are out working at that time. It's not even that there's people walking to and from a bar, home, or whatever. There's people working at that time. So you have that sense of security. But the other piece is it's so well lit. I think something that we say in the US is, oh, that dark alley, but it's never the alley. You always use that adjective dark because it is dark. And because it's dark, it makes it scarier. And that's also where the big dumpsters are. And so somebody could easily hide behind it. Here, the dumpsters are not in an alley because the alleys don't really exist, because an alley is just a small street and people live there. So of
Yeah.
course it's going to be lit because somebody lives there. And so you're going down these little narrow streets, but it's called a narrow street. It's not called an alley. And I think that
Yeah.
really does make a really big difference in safety and comfort. And that is a big thing. Of course, there are parts of the city that aren't great, but wherever you're going to be within the whole old town, it's all safe. Even
Yeah.
within just outside the old town, it's all safe. Like nothing, the non-safe places are way out that you'd have to try to find them.
Yeah.
You wouldn't go there on accident. So let's just say that,
Right, exactly.
which
You're
is
not gonna
also nice.
wander. Yeah, you're not gonna
Right.
wander down the wrong street and end up in a
Exactly.
place that you shouldn't
Exactly.
be.
Which is good to know as well, right? It's like you don't have to worry about, oh, well, what if I take the wrong turn? You're not going to take the wrong turn. You'd have to venture at least a 30-minute walk at minimum. And that's a really couple series of unfortunate wrong turns to get there.
Yeah.
Good luck finding it. But
The
Anyway,
other thing, I know we're getting off topic, but I'm loving this conversation. In Spain, I feel like people don't mind their own business, but in the best way. Like in the States, if something weird is happening, people will just walk over somebody who's like having a seizure in the street. I mean, you've seen those videos, right? I just feel like in Spain, that just doesn't happen. Like people aren't afraid of each other. And so if something looks weird or is weird, like I've experienced it, like people will pull over and like check where's your car parked on the side of the road? Like, are you
yeah,
okay? Like, what's going on? Like, there's definitely more of this, like we're a village, we're a community, and we're not afraid of
yeah,
each other. We're going to take care of each other. Is that always going to happen? No, but there's definitely a better sense of like we're going to look out for each other. And I just that there's that I don't
yeah.
always feel in the United States too.
Yeah, absolutely. I that's another good one. Yeah, it goes back to it's a big small town, right? And I think the one of the reasons for that, I don't know, but this is kind of my conclusion of just observing and living here is again, it's two pieces. One is everybody lives in flats, everybody, but most at least in the city center, a strong majority of people live in a flat and you tend to live at home until much later in life than you do in the US, which for me, that was a little bit of culture shock. So I'm like,
Yeah.
"What do you mean?" Because when I came, of course, I was single, and then I was in my
Yep.
late 20s, and I'm meeting these people, and they're still living at home with their parents in their late
Right. Like
20s,
we're
and I'm
going to go
like
back to your mom's house. What's happening?
I'm like, okay." Like, what that red flag? What's going on here? But then you learn, and once you actually learn about the culture, there's this whole thing called oposiciones, which is this massively impossible exam that people have to take for ever in any sector that if you're going to be in the public sector, you have to take it. That's a whole conversation for a different day. That's a whole other thing. But it's justified, is the point. And it makes a lot more sense. And it's whatever. But then also, grandma and grandpa will often then come back home. And so it's just a big family. It's very family oriented. So going back to community, you're just used to taking care of someone else and being taken care of at different points in your life. And then that goes into you've lived there forever. And so you know your neighbors know you, and then you run into them in the street, or you just happen to run into the same people in the street. You know, I have not lived here forever. My family is not here, but I see the same people in the street, and then you start to recognize them, and you say hello, and it's a really nice sense of community. And I think the other piece is just we're always outside, and so that kind of goes into that, right? So because we're always outside, and you do ultimately see some of these same people, if you like, oh, I recognize you were the friend of so and so. I remember I seeing you in somewhere else. And you just have that automatic, I don't know, it's you feel like they're a friend in a certain way, even if you don't necessarily know that person. Or it's a random stranger and you stop and help them anyway, because it's just simply the right thing to do. I've fallen on my bike before, and then you immediately swarm with people, right? They're like, "Are you okay? Estás bien? Estás bien?" Like, should I call someone? Should I, and it's like, thank you. I am okay. But it's nice. You feel taken care of. And again, as a foreigner coming over that maybe you don't have that support system here, it's comforting to know that the stranger along the street, and again, does it happen every single time? No. But very, very often that is the case, which is nice.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a special place. I love living in Spain, and um, yeah, it's a really wonderful place to live. It's if you're gonna come to another country, especially in southern Spain, where people are just very warm and they'll just grab you and be like, "Come on, join the party."
Yeah.
It makes the transition much easier. So, Stephanie, thank you so much for chatting with me. It was so great to learn about how you settled into Sevilla, how you help people find their place in the city, and I will add all of Stephanie's links below. If you're looking to rent or buy in Sevilla, make sure to reach out to her. She's fantastic. And we'll get to see you in person when we do our scouting trip in November. So I'll see you then.
Sounds great. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. I help people find their place abroad by connecting them to English speaking local real estate experts, as well as visa attorneys, tax consultants, and more. And the best part is, my services are completely free to you. So make sure to reach out to me. Tell me where you are in your process of moving abroad, and I'll connect you to the team of experts that will make your dream a reality. Until next time, make sure to keep traveling, keep exploring, and keep living the life you dream about.